as retailers, I think we tend to hang on to inventory a little bit longer than we really need to. And I think it's about being really, really ruthless in understanding how much inventory we have. And I used to work on a 3 month rule, and most businesses are like that. And if you haven't turned it over in 3 months or so, it's dead stock, right? It's almost going into negative territory. And you really need to consider whether we slash and burn and just turn it into cash very, very quickly and liquidate it. And just make sure that we're not making that same mistake again.
You're listening to the Traffic Handler Podcast. We're about getting new customers, making more sales, and growing your e-commerce retail business. I'm your host, Amy Biddle. My guest today is Alvin Narsey, and Alvin owned and ran pharmacies in Australia, Melbourne, Australia. And after a long, successful run, he ended up selling his businesses. Pharmacy is retail and brick and mortar retail. So he certainly has the inside skinny for a long time. Also, he has gone on to coach other retail businesses, online and offline, and is doing some really interesting things around cash flow and profits. Cash flow and profits, really important stuff. Enjoy today's episode. I'm here with Alvin Narsey, and we're talking retail, we're talking cash flow, and most importantly of all, we're talking profits today. So, Alvin, you are high energy, have been from our first conversation. I am so excited to be talking with you today.
Thank you, Amy. Yeah, I'm really excited to be talking to you as well. And thank you for having me on the show. And I'm really looking forward to going deep and see what we can uncover between ourselves.
Yep, absolutely. Well, I was checking out some of what you're teaching online, and really brilliant. I mean, focusing on cash flow and profits for retailers, it's got to be the bottom line. It's got to be how it goes. Can you give us the high level on that?
Absolutely. Yeah, I actually sometimes, well, in the beginning, I used to feel a little bit subconscious or a little bit embarrassed because cash flow and profitability are just like the basics, right? Like it's just getting an understanding of your money and how to track it, especially in your business and profitability, right? Because after all, aren't we all here as a business owner to make profits and make money?
Yes.
But yes, so in the beginning, I felt a little bit funny about it, but then I look back to my business building career, if you will, and actually it was one of the things that I had no idea about when I first got into business, and I'm sure we'll get into that in a moment.
Yes.
And then if I recall back to my peers who were around me at the time, other people running businesses, I mean, it's a small component of what we do, and it's not something that we focus on. And I think once we start to evolve as a business owner, once you start doing multiple businesses, you actually start to realize that these are the fundamentals. And for your businesses to grow and to set the foundations correctly, you need to have this stuff sorted. So that's the long answer to your question.
No, that's the perfect springboard for the rest of this, because
Cool.
You started in the pharmacy business. You were owning, I think, the pharmacies.
Yep.
Can you talk about how you got your start with this?
Absolutely. Yeah. So yes, you're right. I am a pharmacist by profession, and I built pharmacy-based businesses in Melbourne, Australia at the time. So I went to pharmacy school, graduated, did the traveling thing like most people do, I think, came back and decided that, it was time to get into business. So I got into, pharmacy because in Australia at the time, and probably still the case at the moment, is you have to be a pharmacist to own a pharmacy. So that was my springboard to get into that side of it. And pharmacy in Australia, like most parts of the world, it's a heavy retail offering. And even if you sort of exclude what we call the front of shop side of things, if you're looking at medicines, you're still going through the fact that you need to purchase your medicines, put it on the shelf. You need to also consider what your inventory is like and your turnover and that kind of thing. So essentially it boils down to a retail business, right? So that's what we're doing. We're getting bottles and stuff in. So, I started off in with one business, and then I had some business partners at the time. And, over a period of time, we bought and sold pharmacies. We had 5 at one stage. And then, we decided to go our separate ways midway through the partnership. And then, I was doing it on my own. And during the pandemic last year in Melbourne, Australia, we had, some really stringent kind of lockdowns. And my wife and I, we were just deciding, this is not how we want to live. We have this opportunity to create our lives. We've always been doing that. And all of a sudden, we're like restricted, right? You could only go out for an hour a day. You couldn't go overseas. So many restrictions. So I decided to sell my shop, my pharmacy business. My wife decided to quit her job. And so we moved to Germany.
Yeah.
And, when I sold my business, I was working with a business coach at the time. And I was working with Glenn, and he was like, Alvin, what are you going to do when you get to Germany? I was like, I don't know. I'll probably buy another business, not a pharmacy business, but something else. And, he said, you should be a coach. And I was like, dude, I can't do half the things you're doing. And we left it as that. And then I had another dinner with him before we left Australia. And, he really impressed upon me. And I kind of questioned him again. I was like, well, what would I coach people on? And he gave me a really good answer. He said, do you remember when if you could travel back in time and talk to your 26-year-old self, and you were building your businesses, what would you have told yourself if you'd gone back and met your little self, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's exactly what I did. I followed Glenn's advice. And so for me, I think the fundamentals of setting up and basing your business around cash flow and profitability before we start to do all the fun stuff that we can do in our business is imperative. So that's how I got to doing what I'm doing now, right?
Yeah. So you actually did it. You did the deal yourself and
Yes.
face to face. So, but the principles are going to be the same, whether you're online or offline or both.
Yeah.
And businesses, if they have an offline component, they should have an online component in this day and age.
Absolutely. You need to have a complete suite of offering. And I neglected to mention, like I also had an online offering as well,
Good.
whilst having the bricks and mortar as well. So, it's, I think, what the pundits call an omni-channel approach. And so I was doing the same thing. We were across eBay, and we were also using eBay as a platform, and also using our own transactional site. We were using Magento at the time.
Great.
All good fun. And it was really good fun trying to get all the different point of sale systems to speak, the retail floor one to the online one. It was not fun at all, but
no. Integrations used to be a lot harder than they are now.
Yes.
I got started online over 20 years ago. And yeah, it's integrations now are easier than they were. They get easier all the time, but not easy.
Exactly. And back to your point, yes, it's all the fundamentals, right? Whether you're selling bricks and mortar in a shop or whether you're selling online, and really any business, if you look at it, right? If you look at any other business, if you've got a trucking business, also other coaching businesses, really it's about understanding your cash flow and your profitability. And the way that you do that across most businesses are really the same. And I've just chosen to niche into retail because I've been doing it for so long. I can talk the language and I resonate with other retailers really well. So
makes all the sense in the world.
Makes sense, right?
Yeah, no, it's perfect. So one of the things that on the pre-show notes that I was looking at is you seem to have a method for tracking cash flow that is sort of distinct. Tell me about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's distinct because it's really, really simple, and it's distinct because it's a little bit contrary to what your accountant or bookkeeper would advise or recommend, or if they pull reports for you, or also the online software Xero or QuickBooks or whatever you're using. And so basically what I discovered and what others taught me when I was running my businesses, it's really important to know at the time of trading what your cash flow is, right? Because only then you can make some really powerful decisions moving forward. So all we do and I work with my clients to do this, and everybody really, is we just track our cash flow in real time. So what do I mean by that? So, we work on a trading week, usually most parts of the world. So we work on a Monday to Sunday. So for each week, we just track our cash flow. And how do we do that? Well, thanks to internet banking, we just download our data from our internet banking, right? And we just look at what our credits were for that week. So what came into the bank account, our debits, what we paid out of our bank account for that week. And we just make sure that that end figure marries up with whatever's in our bank account figure, so we know we've done it correctly. And it's that simple process. Like, it sounds so simple, but it is actually just gives you so much optics into your business, right? Because right there in that particular week, you know exactly what is happening in your business and what
Yeah.
happens, in and out. And the powerful thing is, if you do this consistently, which is what we get you to do on a weekly basis, after 12 weeks, you can start to predict the future. You can start forecasting with a high level of accuracy in your business, And then it gets really fun, because when you start to forecast, you can be like, okay, so for instance, I don't know, there is a computer that we're going to purchase. It's like 10 grand. What if we bought it now, today, next week? How will that impact the future cash flow?
Yes.
Or we can make a decision like, what if we lease it and we put in those lease payments in there and see how that impacts our future cash flow? So just little things like that, which just gives you amazing insight into the future.
And control, because you and
Yeah.
I know the avatar, the persona of the retailer, the top level is everyone wants control.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's brilliant. So tracking in real time
Yeah.
and looking at numbers day to day, and weekly summaries
Yes.
and 12-week chunks, being able to predict, track the quarter, predict the next quarter. So
Exactly.
there are fluctuations, like there are seasonal cycles. A lot of businesses have seasonal cycles.
Especially
Here in the US, we have a midsummer, our summer. You're from Australia, so that's, the seasonality is different, but the methods are the same. And I know you're not in Australia right now, you're in Germany.
I'm a German.
But
Yeah.
like we'll have like an Independence Day lull in the middle of the summer, and Black Friday, huge spike. How do you work in the cash flow tracking? Because then you have to be able to accumulate all of your quarters for
Yes.
a year or two to be able to, really maximize the value of the forecasting, right?
Absolutely. So that's definitely one way to do it with a certain level of accuracy. But
Okay.
the other way we can do it is, and the way I recommend my clients, and what I used to do when you're first starting out, within that first year, is, hopefully you're using a point of sale system, hopefully,
Yes.
right? And hopefully you've got enough data, and it's, the data is integral and all that. I assume we've got all that sorted, because that's another fun thing with point of sale systems. But we can just grab the sales data from, for instance, that last season, divided by 4. It's going to be an average, and it's going to be close to, and then you'll need to add in some input. So is the coronavirus pandemic, has that affected your sales by 10%, or how has that been this year versus last year? And let's just make an intelligent decision. It's not going to be accurate, 100% accurate, but so, if we took X amount this time last year and we've been affected by corona or whatever's going on in our marketplace, we can try and factor that in, take 10% off or whatever it might be based on the market. And then let's just divide that by 4, and then just put that in for that month, and for the forecasting component of it. But you're right. Once, our game, the retail game, is definitely seasonal. And so we need to start adjusting for these things to get a much accurate picture. But that would be just one way I would do it.
Sure, that makes sense. So, it's actually kind of like, okay, here are the numbers, follow them, not
Yes.
blindly, use your brain,
Yes.
it's not just a ballast. So, being able to, look at those numbers and say, okay, we know that every year at this time, we have this event happening, whether it's an outside event. Chinese New Year impacts a lot of retailers every year. And yet we joke like, oh my gosh, it's Chinese New Year
Yeah.
again. And we forgot,
Forgot
like
about
it
it.
happens every year. So
Exactly.
all these things. All right. So this is cool. What else can we do?
Wow. Okay. The other thing that I find is really, really important is really understanding our margins. I think in retail, that's so important. And I know this happens a lot in bricks and mortar world, but I'm sure it happens in e-commerce world as well. Is just, we just really want to make sure that we are maintaining our margins in our business. I think a lot of us easily can go down the discounting route, and that's really detrimental for our business. There are certain things that we have to price according to the market. That's great. Hopefully we know what that is.
Yeah.
And we adjust our pricing accordingly. But taking a step back, hopefully we know who exactly our target market is, right? Our ideal customer, avatar customer, whatever it's called in your market. So you know exactly who they are. And, let's start to ensure that we're really catering our products for this clientele, right?
Mhm.
And we want to make sure that within those products that we're selling to these people, we want to make sure we're making sufficient margin. So it sounds so simple again, but I think many of us get trapped into the fact that because the store down the road or the other really big online store is discounting, we have to do the same thing.
Yeah.
But, we just really got to be mindful of that. And, make sure we don't discount across the whole board if you're choosing to discount your suite of products.
Right.
And let's be really intelligent and have a look at our business again, and like who are we really trying to target here, because not all of us can be an Amazon, and nor should we really. Like, if we've really got a ideal customer in mind, let's make sure we've got our products and services products suited to our ideal client. So I think
Right.
margins often underlooked because people just assume that we're making money by selling this at a particular price because that's what the others are selling it, but we have no idea what they're purchasing at, right? Many of the bigger players, as we know, get far better discounts and rebates.
Yeah.
So they can afford to price a little bit better than, your individual e-commerce shop can.
Absolutely. Yeah, I
Mm.
did a sourcing course a while back with a colleague of mine who used to run 2 billion dollar financials in apparel retail for Walmart.
Yep.
And so we did this sourcing course, and the whole thing came down to, what are you charging? Why are you charging that? And in a lot of cases, it comes down to charge more if you can.
Yes.
But and one of the things, and you probably do this too, working with your clients, is don't discount just because.
Yes.
Hi, we just met. Here's 10% off. Don't do
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
No, 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 no,
Yeah.
no. In
Yeah.
fact, raise your prices.
Yes, we've all got to
That's
be raising our prices. Absolutely. And
yeah,
we should be looking at, and with the way we set up our checkout carts, and a lot of software is helping us do this now anyway, but
mm,
just making sure that we're providing the full range of products to help our customer solution, right? So
yeah,
having that extra upsell at the checkout card, or however you have your software, your website design. So those are really just little things. And it's really boils down to the would you like fries with that
yeah,
component, where even a small percentage increase in your average dollar sale, average dollar sale can
mhm.
make a significant impact to your bottom line if you look at it over 52 weeks, right? If you look at it over a year.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. I mean, even quarterly. So,
Yeah.
would you like fries with that? Brilliant analogy. Also, when you're checking out at the grocery store, how many packs of gum have you taken home
Yes.
over the last year, 20 years, whatever? Candy bar, if you're into that sort of thing. I try
Yeah.
not to, but
Yeah.
that those impulse purchases add up. And
Yeah.
that's why they're there. That's why grocery stores are strategically designed to make you
Exactly.
put stuff in your cart.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah. So important. And in the beginning, when I was running my shops, I thought, this is a gimmick, this is not going to work. Just having little bits and pieces at the front
Right.
register or the front counter there. But
Yeah.
yeah, like you said, it does work. And I just wanted to circle back to a point that we made earlier was I think a lot of retailers, e-commerce as well, sort of neglect to understand or track and measure this average sale per customer. I think that's really, really important because as a metric, it's one of these fantastic metrics that we can track and we can have a significant impact on, which will, grow our business, improve our profits and cash flow as well. So
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So average order value, yes. And lifetime customer value.
yes, yeah,
Huge. Come back to the
huge.
store, buy again,
Yes,
and
yes.
invite them and develop that relationship.
Absolutely. There's plenty of statistics out there that say, and I believe this as well, like it costs far less to keep your customer than it is to go out to the market and acquire another customer, right?
That's
So
right.
if we have systems in place that can continue to nurture our customers or and invite them to come and shop with us more often, it's just going to be so much better for us
Yeah.
and so much better for our customers as well, right? Because they have a relationship, they know what we're all about, they know our
Yeah.
service. So it's a win-win for everybody. Often
It is.
overlooked, right?
It's yeah, I mean, if you have that relationship with that customer, then that can inform what additional inventory you go after too. Like
Totally.
you have a whole segment of people who buy extra large fuchsia jackets,
Yes.
great, match that, sell
Yes.
them something else. I
Yeah.
mean,
Absolutely. And yeah, this is all part of also, especially on the e-commerce side. And we did the same in bricks and mortar land, is to, have some sort of loyalty program, or, it's a lot easier now with e-commerce to, you've got access to this data from your clients and customers, right? And then it's about how do we use that data effectively.
yeah,
And I think one of the main things is it's so easy to get overwhelmed with the data, especially in e-commerce world, right?
yeah,
So you want to be able to really, I think, and this is what I love doing in all business, just simplify it down and just look at some major metrics or some major initiatives that you can start to implement before you get really fancy.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
just stick to the basics in the beginning.
So what's an example of something that you could implement to kind of move the needle on the whole machine?
Okay, absolutely. So the first thing, I mean, we've spoken about the average dollar sales, so I think that's really, really important. We don't need to go into that. The other thing, if we're keeping inventory on hand, I think as retailers, I think we tend to hang on to inventory a little bit longer than we really need to. And I think it's about being really, really ruthless in understanding how much inventory we have. And I used to work on a 3-month rule, and most businesses are like that. And if you haven't turned it over in 3 months or so, it's dead stock, right? It's almost going into negative territory. And you really need to consider whether we slash and burn and just turn it into cash very, very quickly and liquidate it, and just make sure that we're not making that same mistake again, right? And this is retail. Sometimes it can get very challenging to predict. There might be a special deal that's happening in the marketplace, or a special activity that's happening in the marketplace. But what I want to reiterate is we just need to be really quick and nimble to move when these kind of things happen.
Yes. Yeah. So that might mean creating an event.
Yeah.
That might mean, segmenting to, we have this thing and price may be the deciding factor. So we can actually, liquidate and
Yeah.
make room on the shelves and get cash to buy more. And
Exactly. Yeah, you're far better off turning it into cash after a certain period of time than the inventory sitting in your storeroom, right?
yeah,
In the
yeah.
e-commerce world.
So that
Yeah.
would be perhaps at the expense of the margins.
Yes, in that case, it would definitely be an expense at the margins, but we're
Yeah.
turning into cash because it's effectively dead stock.
Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. All right, cool. What what have I not asked you yet? I mean, it seems like the fundamentals, but you and I both know um this is not necessarily top of mind.
Yeah.
Retailer
Oh,
goes to work in the
totally.
morning,
Totally.
you know,
Yeah.
they're working on the display or some electronic version of the display and photo shoots and stuff like
Yeah.
that. But
So I know your audience is mainly e-commerce, is that right?
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
great. So I mean, one of the things that we do both in e-commerce world and in bricks and mortar world is to have some sort of a KPI dashboard,
Oh yeah.
right? So some key performance indicators are really, really important. And this is another black hole that e-commerce retailers can get down, is like, because we've got access to so much data and we can pull reports. And so we can overcomplicate the data. We can have a dashboard that looks like the Millennium Falcon, right? It can just
Yeah.
have so many dials and so many lights flashing at us. I think it's really important to take a step back, understand what KPIs are meaningful for our business. And I would dare say, usually in retail world, there's a few which are common for all of us, like average sale per customer or average sale per client. We also need to be knowing our average margins. Bricks and mortar world, we like to know our wages bill, or what we're paying as a percentage. And certainly I think inventory is important. We need to be tracking our inventory on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
And then of course, depending on your business, you can have a couple more KPIs that are unique to your business that you think. And so when I work with my clients, I try and get them to think of, like, eventually I would like you, the business owner, to think about your business. You're on the beach, you're in the sun lounge chair,
Yeah.
and you're looking at your KPI dashboard, and you've got to be able to tell your team or get somebody else to manipulate those metrics to improve your business, right? So you can
Right.
have a look at like, hey guys, why is our average dollar sale low this week? What are we doing to improve that? Why was our labor expense high that week? So we need to pick a few other KPIs that are unique to our business. So I recommend no more than 10, 6 to 10, and it's really got to be visible in like an A4 size, and in e-commerce world, like just a screen, right, with just some basic numbers on there. And I think we need to do it weekly. So I think because it's so easy to get lost in all the other data, and then what happens is you end up getting analysis paralysis, and you never look at your KPI dashboard because it's so overwhelming, and then you just don't know what to do with all that information and kind of put it to one side. So yeah, I think KPI dashboard is so important.
Absolutely. I agree with you 1,000% if there is such a thing. And, it's one of the things that we talk about in my world is, from an advertising perspective, if you're overpaying for your ads, that's got to come from somewhere. And it's going to come right out of your profits, and that's going to mess everything up. So, you have to know all of your numbers. So
absolutely. I think it's so important.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's applicable in e-commerce world as well, which is what I work on with my clients, is we have we try and set up a system for optimizing our expenses. And so, it's just really about attending to the expense component of our balance sheet on a monthly basis, and just really working through and sometimes it's really as simple as emailing a supplier, the electricity company or whoever it is, or picking up the phone and just having a conversation and seeing, can we get a better rate? And, you might not get one, one company might give you 0.5% off, but if you're doing this on a monthly basis consistently, it really can add up. And 2 or 3% over the course of the year, if you're turning over a large business, that's just straight bottom line into your profit, right? So it sounds so simple again, but I think as business owners, it's so easy for us to get lost in our business doing all the other things and doing sexy stuff like marketing and all that kind of thing. And, and we kind of neglect this low hanging fruit.
Yep. And while you were talking, it occurred to me that, I have a client who changed their shipping partner. And that immediately put like an additional 2% down in the bottom line annually. I mean, it was phenomenal.
Right.
And you think, well, 2%, but increase store sessions, improve conversion rate on the store, and save on your shipping. I mean, exponential growth is just incredible.
Compound exponentially. Yeah, that's right. And I think that's the thing, like we often forget as business owners, right? There's little components of our business that we constantly need to be tweaking. And it's that compounding exponential effect, like you said, that's often overlooked. So well done. Yeah.
Cool. And to you, this is fun. I could talk about this all day, but unfortunately we don't have all day. So where do people find you when they want to learn more about what you have to offer?
Absolutely. Yeah. So you can just Google me everywhere, Alvin Narsey. You can come onto, you can start a conversation with me on LinkedIn or Facebook. I'm sure, Amy, you're going to have my details.
I am. You'll be in the show notes.
In the show notes. Just let me know you heard me on here. We can continue the conversation, and we can take it from there. But really, just throw me into Google. You'll see all of my intellectual property on YouTube and everywhere. So excellent.
Good. Well, definitely, listeners, you're watching on YouTube or listening to this on your podcast player, check out Alvin in the show notes. There will be links. And Alvin, thank you so much for coming on today.
Awesome. Amy, thank you so much for having me. Great.
You've been listening to the Traffic Handler Podcast. We're about getting new customers, making more sales, and growing your e-commerce retail business. I'm your host, Amy Biddle. Get more at amybiddle.me. And until next time, go sell more stuff.